here's an example of a scatter plot. And this one would be counted as linear. Linear just means that they make a straight line. Now, the straight line can slope up the way, it can slope down the way. Technically, it can slope that way. You would be pointless having data vertical, but I guess you could.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, it wasn't specific to it. It kept making it seem like it was more of it had to go straight across. I was like, no.
That's because in most practical situations, the data will have a slope to it. This point, while we're at that, this is linear, which is one of the terms that you would see being used.
And that's logarithmic, right?
No, just linear, straight line linear. Logarithmic is what happens when they sometimes change the scale to make it linear. It's not the same thing. Logarithmic data would actually probably look in its raw form a little bit more like this. And the shape of the curve that goes through it would look like a log function, if you know what a log function is. We don't do that, so don't even think about logarithmic. Just think, right?
And
now,
then
this is called linear.
Curve
Not finished yet, here we go. And it's called positive. And it's positive because the slope of the line is positive. If it's pointing that way, it's called negative.
Oh, okay.
Right? So this particular one is linear and it's positive. And then you have a kind of vague word. And the reason I'm saying it's vague is because sometimes people are arguing about what it is. It can be strong, it can be moderate, or it could be weak. And all that is trying to do is to try and describe how close most of the data is to being a straight line. So if it was strong, it would look very much like almost one line. If it was
where it's all clustered together, right?
Yeah. If it's kind of weak, it's still linear, but it looks kind of like that. And then moderate is somewhere halfway between those two. I'm not sure I'm going to be good at moderate, but you know, something like that would be moderate. So that's what's strong. Now, the way I do it is I imagine a sausage going around the data. And fat sausages are weak and skinny sausages are strong. And the moderate one is kind of halfway between those two extremes. So when you see a set of data, you can use some of this, these words to describe what is really visual. So if I, for instance, gave you some data and it looked something like that, you could say it was linear. You would say it was negative, and you'd probably go moderate. Right. And so those three words, if I had said them to you, I'm about to write down some data, a scatter plot, and it's negative, right? And it's linear and it's moderate. Can you visualize something that might look like that? So it's just words that allow us to describe visual things.
So if the linear, so if it's straight across, then that's just, we don't really label that, right? But if it's got the slants, then we can do positive or negative?
Correct. Okay.
And then the only other one is what the heck they really mean by that curvilinear.
Curvilinear.
Okay, say it again.
Curvilinear.
Curvilinear.
Well, that's how I say it. It's probably pronounced differently if you're an American, but it's curvilinear, right? And I hate that term. I wish they just called it curved, because that's what curvilinear is. And so curvilinear would be data that kind of changes direction like that. And if you imagine the thing that would go through it, the best fitting thing, wouldn't it be a curve?
Yeah.
We call that curvilinear. I would just call it a curve data. In fact, I bet you if you look at other videos from some other people, they'd probably say this data is curved.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's where I was getting confused because they weren't using the same term that WebAssign was using specifically. So I was like, I want to make sure
Right.
that I
Now-
have that done.
Now, curvilinear does get some of the same ones. And we don't call it linear, we'll call it curvilinear. Okay, that's fine, right? Now, you can actually talk about positive and negative. This one is positive. Now, you might say, well, it's not a line, how can it be positive? Positive in this sense means you're going uphill.
Yeah.
So as long as you're going uphill, even if you're kind of flat line at the end, that's counted as a positive relationship, right? A positive association. So this one would be curvilinear, positive, and then you see the strong, moderate, or weak. You can use those same terms. If all the data points are really close to being that curve, that's strong, right? If they're very big fat, well, it'd be a bent sausage, right? But it'd still be a big fat sausage, right? That would be weak. And somewhere between the two would be the moderate. So we still use many of the same terms, even though this is straight line, linear, and this is curved, curvilinear, but the words strong, moderate, and weak get used. For instance, if you wanted to see what a negative curvilinear would look like, it looks something like this. There we go. Can you see it curving downhill now? And then you could say negative, obviously. And the last one is always a bit of a hit and miss. I wouldn't call that strong. So my gut feeling is I'd probably call that moderate. But some people would look at it and they disagree and they'd say it's weak. Especially when you're not borderline, right? Is it strong or is it moderate? I think it's strong, but you think it's moderate. If you want to be a politician, there's a way around that. You can say it's moderately strong, which means it's between strong and moderate, or moderately weak. So that gives you like 5 terms now, if you're really pushed. But I think the textbook only allows those 3 words, so you have to commit yourself.
Yeah.